Today, as a representative of our wellbeing group, we're delighted to have Celynn here today with us. Celynn is a registered dietitian and works as a full-time professional speaker in both the UK, France and South Africa. She has also published a bestseller book in her native South Africa entitled Fast Food for Sustained Energy. You might want to plug that later on, Celynn. Basically, Celynn speaks about supporting busy people on how to manage energy and fatigue levels and creating positive lifestyle behaviours, which I'm sure we could all do with a bit of. In an age where life seems to just get busier and busier, there's never been a more important time really to focus on looking after yourselves. And this workshop is going to focus on simple things that you can do right now to hopefully make a difference. Okay, so I'll be handing over to Celynn in a minute, but just before I do that, I do just want to mention one other thing, which is on the This Is Me campaign that we are participating in later this year. The This Is Me campaign, which is all advertised on our intranet on the wellbeing page, it's basically a pioneering citywide mental health campaign which was started by the Lord Mayor's Appeal, and a number of corporates have participated in this, such as Barclays, Bank of England, Deloitte, PwC and Aon, amongst others. And what it does is it gets people who have either have currently or have in the past suffered from a mental health issue, and it brings it to life in a way. It just lets people know that they do a short video. You just have very short, like 30 seconds or so of, say, 5 or 6 people talking. And really what it's trying to get across is like it's okay to have a mental health issue in a similar way to a physical health issue, to try and destigmatize it and to make it just clearer that anyone, as we know, can experience a mental health issue. Most people in this room, I'm sure, know someone, family or friend, who suffered from mental health illness. It doesn't define us, it doesn't limit us, and it doesn't restrict the jobs that we can do. So it's just to make it seem more normal. So currently we have 3 or 4 females who are interested in participating in this, which is great. But as you know, we have actually more than half the population of CBRE is male. And sadly, it's more males who do take their own lives. So we would be very, very keen to hear from any men who have experienced issues who would be willing to participate in this. So if anyone in the room or anyone else you know of in CBRE might be willing, have a chat with them and see they could come and talk to me or one of our wellbeing champions, 100% in confidence. And the other thing, there's no pressure on anyone to do this, but just if people were willing to do it, it would be wonderful. Okay, and now I'm going to hand over to Celynn. Thank you.
Hello, this is great. Thank you for investing the time and energy to be here with me. And clearly I have an agenda. I've come with some slides. I have a lot that I'd like to share, but I also would like to keep it interactive. So I'm going to be quite conscious of time and wrap up by 2 in case you were planning to be out of here by 2. If you don't need to rush out, we can then open the floor to engage and I can answer some questions. I will also share with you my contact details. And so whichever social media platform you choose to use, I'm really just a Facebook Messenger or a WhatsApp message or a LinkedIn post away. Because this is a conversation that doesn't just happen like a light switch on, off, and then we get it. If it did, then everybody would be calm, harmonious, wealthy, and slim. But we aren't. So many of us are giving up our health while we're building our personal and our organizational wealth. And in the line of work that I do as a health practitioner, I see too many individuals that get really close to, if not beyond, burnout, and really serious fatigue, and then health issues like diabetes and hypertension and heart disease and Alzheimer's and cancers. But we're not going to talk about those 5 conditions, even though those 5 conditions account for 70% of why people today die or have disability of some kind. That, however, is not sexy. We don't change our behavior because of long-term health risk. We will perhaps change our behavior if we know that it's going to give us more energy today. Because most of us want immediate gratification, and we're so stressed and wired in today's VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. And the understanding I have, certainly within your industry, that that is the case, is that time is a finite resource, but energy isn't. So we can renew our energy, and that's what the conversation today for the next 45 minutes or so is about. What are the fundamental things we should have in place to make sure that we're harnessing our energy effectively so that we can get more done in less time, not just physically, but also mentally and emotionally. So we don't want to compromise either of those dimensions. And a lot of what I'm going to share with you, you may already know. So this could just be a reminder, which in itself is really powerful. What I know, though, about behavior change and neuroscience is that many of us, if we're high achievers, and I think all of us in this room are, is that we try and do too much at once. So as we wrap up, I'm going to ask you to pledge one thing that resonates with your head, your heart, and your gut around what you will commit to doing differently, and that is your strategy as you leave the room. If we try and do too much at once, and we often do these on like a Monday morning, we set ourselves up for failure as opposed to success. So we're going to take a look at what I call the base of the performance pyramid, and the framework we're going to look at is called the Fabculator or Wellculator, and it's about how you feed yourself and how we move our body, and I'll touch on the science around that, and then how we actually shift our behaviors. Why is this important? Because these are the fundamental things that we need in place if we want to really harness our emotional intelligence, which then helps us to harness this 4-pound universe that sits on top of our shoulders, and ultimately that's what drives growth and agility and innovation, not just on a personal level, but certainly within an organization. This topic, however, is an emotional one. So I'm going to share with you the how and the what you can do. So there's a framework that I've been using for over a decade, and there's a lot of tips on how to do it. But ultimately, if you don't engage your heart, so Simon Sinek that you may have come across in the Golden Circle, how he highlights really, it's the why we create a shift and a change that matters the most. So there's a local speaker and colleague and friend called Nigel Reznor that you may have come across. He's written a great book called It's a Zoo Around Here. I'm an elephant, if anybody has read the book. I think there are quite a few elephants in the room, less monkeys. Nigel said to me, because he lost a lot of weight, about 3 stone, and I was really intrigued, like, how did you do that? And he said to me, Celynn, whenever you have a strong enough reason why, you will find a how, no matter how busy your lifestyle. And Nigel Reznor is possibly one of the global busiest speakers. So in an international city, 2 or 3 times a week across the globe. And he managed to not compromise his health while building his wealth. So we're going to look at a 10-step framework. So this is a bit like going on a Contiki tour. So can I ask you, I think most of you have had a little bite to eat. So seatbelt on, and we're going to go to 10 destinations. You don't need to remember everything, by the way. If you would like a copy of the slides or any follow-up notes or resources that I mentioned, because I mentioned quite a few resources, I would be happy. In fact, I will send a list of everything I mentioned that you could put up onto the intranet, perhaps. So let's stop at the first destination. How would you answer this question? Do you have a refueling strategy? So that implies that you've got some kind of plan around the way that you feed yourself most of the time, and it includes some kind of feedback so that you can adjust if the plan's not working. I generally come across this. So whether it's in Johannesburg or in London, is that a lot of us, there's morning mayhem. So we skip breakfast or we grab something on the go. We end up having back-to-back meetings, so we have back-to-back cups of coffee. We probably skip lunch and then look for some kind of snack in the afternoon to lift our energy. And then by the time we get home, it may even be much later than 8. But we finally get a chance to eat, but we eat too much, too late. And I've left out the wine and the chocolate, potentially. And if you're out with clients, as I know a lot of you are, that's tough. So can anybody resonate with aspects of this? I see a few nods. I see some big nods. Okay, so in terms of managing our health, and I think it's important to mention that I was French before I was a health practitioner. So my family are from Champagne, and I was brought up in a context of good food, good wine, moderation. And so my approach is not a purist one. I've also seen that doesn't work. Because I do full-time corporate work, I think we have to be realistic that many of us leave home in the dark, we get back home in the dark, and that creates a big challenge. So when we set ourselves up for success, I think the best approach or formula is to take the 80-20 approach. 80% of the time, if you put into place what works for you, and I'm going to share a framework that works for most of us, but what I also know is that each and every one of us has an individual personalized blueprint. And as much as you can personalize your strategy to refuel yourself, the better. And I will share some of the tests that are now available to be able to personalize your approach to make sure that it really works for you. This strategy, however, in terms of managing our long-term health risk, is not the best strategy because this eating plan would promote a process called inflammation, and inflammation is the first step towards aging and any form of disease. But if we're looking at energy management, and I promised you we wouldn't go into a health talk, so energy, we know, comes from our blood glucose, which is our fuel. And in this case, our blood glucose levels would roller coaster. So there would be periods of time where it dips, where it spikes, and the biggest issue is all the variation in between if we're not consistent with our strategy. Why is this bit of biology and physiology important? If you want to own the title CEO, and I'm not suggesting that anybody takes over anybody's position. For me, the title CEO is Chief Energy Officer. So if you want to be able to mobilize your energy on demand, you absolutely have to get this fundamental step in place. You have to manage your blood glucose. Because when your blood sugar or your blood glucose drops, how do you feel? Has anybody had low blood sugar in the last week? So some of us get tired. I had a client recently who just doesn't think about food. She just gets into work and she's in flow. But what happened was that she collapsed in her office. Very similar experience to what Ariana Huffington had. And well, Ariana Huffington, if I remember, she collapsed and hurt her jaw or broke her jaw. My colleague chipped her tooth. I can go on if that, I don't know why that's happened. There we go. And that was a big wake-up call for her. So what she decided to do is to have a company similar to Gray's locally, deliver snacks, and she set a timer on her phone for 3 p.m. and whether she feels like it or not, she will eat some kind of snack just to help stabilize her blood glucose so that doesn't happen, because she's working 14, 16-hour days, as many of us do sometimes. So when our blood sugar drops, we get tired. I find that I don't get physically tired. I have the kind of personality and I can override that, especially with adrenaline and another cup of coffee. But what happens to all of us, and this is what neuroscientists like David Rock and Tara Swartz are saying, and I'll introduce you to Tara a little bit later, is that there's a reaction in our brain that happens when our blood sugar drops, that happens to all of us regardless of age and gender, is that the back part of the brain, which I call the lizard, because I'm not a neuroscientist, so I can get away with simplifying things like that, but your lizard will override your wizard. So the lizard part of the brain is triggered. That's where the fight or flight or freeze response comes from. So levels of anxiety and panic and stress and short, shallow breathing can get worsened. And the front of the brain, the wizard, this is the prefrontal cortex, where our ability to stay focused and remember and problem solve and short-term memory tends to not work as well, which makes sense. It's a survival instinct. If you're about to fall down and collapse, your brain is going to drive you towards finding food. And probably at that point here, you would crave something sugary or fast-releasing, or something that's going to give you a kick, like an energy drink or another cup of coffee. Likewise, when your blood glucose is too high, not good. For long-term health, this suppresses your immune system. It also, if it's combined with stress hormones like cortisol, you end up storing weight really effectively. So even if you're not eating much, if your blood glucose is high because you're making the wrong choices or eating sporadically, and perhaps not getting enough sleep, because that'll also increase your cortisol, that combination of insulin and blood sugar and cortisol is a recipe for storing weight around your waist. And when we carry excess weight around our waist, we know that it puts us at increased risk of those conditions, diabetes, heart disease, and hypertension, because the weight sits close to your organs like your liver, your heart, your pancreas. So either end of the spectrum is not good. Too low, too high, and certainly the variation in between is not good. So if we want to mobilize energy and stabilize our energy so that at 8 p.m. we have the same amount of energy as 8 a.m. on a physical, emotional, or mental level, we have to try and avoid these fluctuations. So one way to do that, and here there's different schools of thought. So the strategy that I put into place most of the time, 80% of the time, is to have the right strategic snacks. So if I come to your office now, and those of you that have a desk drawer, or maybe you've got a travel bag or a handbag, has anybody got food on them? Could you give me something to eat? And what would that be? I'm hoping it's not like a Snickers bar or a bag of wine gums.
Banana.
Banana, so fruit? Okay, an orange. So fresh fruit is great. Too much fruit is not great, but fruit sugar is very different to refined added sugar, so we're not going to go into the sugar conversation today. But 1 or 2 pieces of fruit a day is actually important, I think, for avoiding sugar cravings. Once you have a craving, you're probably more likely to go for sweets or a chocolate. And it could be because you don't have enough natural sugar in your diet or enough protein. So fruit is great. Dried fruit is also good, except that it's really concentrated, so we need to have smaller portions. Things like nuts and seeds and trail mix and the right kind of health bars. And how do you choose the right kind of health bar or any snack is to look at the labels. And I'm sure that some of you are reading labels. There's lots of information on a label, from preservatives to the different types of sugar to sodium. It can get quite overwhelming. Generally, if you're choosing a strategic snack, you want to keep the portion to a handful, which is about 120 calories of whatever it is that you're having, and ideally no sugar inside that snack. So if you look at the list of ingredients on an item, you want to try and choose ingredients that are more whole, less processed. Ideally, there should only be maybe 3 or 4 ingredients at most, so as opposed to a long string of 15 ingredients where you can't pronounce half the names. So one strategy is to make sure that you have the right snack so that you don't have these long periods of time where you just don't eat anything. And by doing that, it could potentially help you to not eat as much later in the day. I remember working with an engineer who did not want to eat in the day because he said to me, Celynn, the moment I have breakfast, it just triggers my appetite and I just want to eat and I don't have time to eat and I'm close to retirement and I've always done it this way. Coffee, 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 evening meal. And the evening meal was not the most healthiest meal. He was an Afrikaans engineer. So if any of you have been to South Africa or you understand the Afrikaans culture, there's always red meat, generally 2 starches, and sugared and buttered vegetables. And what Reznor did is he committed to having a snack in the car on the way back home. He had a very long commute of about 90 minutes to get back home. So at the end of the day, he had a snack. What do you think happened when Reznor walked through his front door? He was not as famished as before, so despite not changing what he ate, because he did not want to eat fish and steamed vegetables, he stuck to what he had always had, but he managed to eat less. And he lost 3.7 kilos, so about 8 pounds by doing that. So I don't know if anybody here wants to lose a stone or a few kilos or a few pounds, but often when we want to lose weight, we think about what can I cut out? I need to eat less, cut out this food group, not drink anymore. And sometimes it's not about cutting things out, it's about being more strategic, about how can I add something in that could potentially have a ripple effect, like in his case, help him to eat less of a meal that wasn't serving him that well. So take a look at this chap. He's having a protein-based, portion-controlled afternoon snack, and look at how physically he responds. This could be you every afternoon.
Such a feeling's coming over me. There is wonder in most everything I see. Not a cloud in the sky, got the sun in my eyes, and I won't be surprised if it's a dream. I'm on the top of the world.
This is the end. Beautiful friend, this is the end, my only friend, the end of our elaborate plans.
You get the idea. You can physically bounce back, but it's so much harder to do that if you don't have natural energy to help you mobilize that. Another way to mobilize our energy and help us to bounce back is not just through food. In fact, some of us reach for food simply to change our state because we've been sitting still for too long. And we know that sitting is the new smoking, and that when we sit for anything longer than about half an hour, our metabolism starts to slow down, our body temperature drops, we often compromise on posture, so we might start to slouch and lean forward, cross our legs. That can create tension, musculoskeletal issues and headaches. So we should be moving for 2 to 3 minutes every half an hour, or at least every hour. And so at this point, you're guessing what I'm about to suggest. Can I ask you to please just stand? And let's just do a quick 1-minute activation as I show you some really cool research. So there's a lot of research to show that moving like this can actually help. So ideally, we should actually move away from our desks, but we're not going to do that right now. What they did is they took a large group of employees and they got them to do what they call a microburst activation. It was a 3 to 5 minute walk brisk walk to the water cooler fountain or up a flight of stairs to a colleague, and they measured their energy levels. Just before they went and did this activation, their energy on average was reported as 3 out of 10. Directly after the 3 to 5 minute activation, the energy levels were close to 9.5 out of 10, which is pretty cool. But what's even cooler than that is 1 hour later, on average, the energy levels were reported as still double what they were before. This is why I just came from a meeting with Steelcase, who some of you may know. I believe that they're a partner of CBRE, and they design funky workplaces. And there's many organizations now that are looking at how ergonomically they design their space to encourage movement. So simply for you as an individual, do you stand up and work sometimes? Because you can invest in a really fancy variable height desk, or you can just do what I do whenever I'm in a different hotel room, because I travel a lot, is I just pack things and I get my laptop up to the right height and I stand and work. Especially after a long train trip or being in a plane or being in a car, it's really good to stand. You'll get through more work faster, because when you sit, then all those slow down mechanisms that I mentioned tend to happen. What also happens when you sit for long periods of time, there's an enzyme in our bloodstream called lipoprotein lipase. It breaks down fat. It goes to sleep. So if you want to burn fat by simply moving, you can keep that enzyme going, which is some good news. So thank you for taking a stand, and now please take a seat. Or stay standing if you wish, but you might block the person behind you. So another point on the Wellculator is this really important one. In fact, if you want to live a long, healthy life, you absolutely have to do this. You need to eat like an artist. That means eating a lot of color and turning your plate into a canvas for color. What we know about populations that are living long, healthy lives, like the Okinawans, or there's a group in Greece that tend to be living to over 100, without diabetes, without osteoporosis, without inflammation, without being overweight, with very minimal mental issues. One of the things that they have in place, besides the social engagement and drinking a little bit of wine, very good news, is that they eat an abundance of plant-based foods. In fact, there was a study from Harvard Medical School recently about how to boost cognitive fitness. 6 steps to improving brain function. Step 1 was eating a plant-based diet. So no matter what diet you're on, you could choose to eat high protein, high fat, you could choose to eat low GI carbohydrates, paleo, whichever approach you take, there seems to be one common thread that most of the experts agree on, because there's a lot of controversy and disagreements amongst the experts. But this is one that they seem to all agree with. The more plant-based foods we have in our diet, the better. For various reasons, these foods are very high in botanicals, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants that act like medicine, and they help our DNA repair itself. So the more variety you can eat, the better. Some of us get into a rut and we buy the same foods and we make the same things. So it's good to get some inspiration from recipes. And you don't have to become Joe Wicks or Jamie Oliver or Nigella. It really can be simple techniques. So for instance, if you'd like to hear from me, I do a Friday foodie recipe, and it's always 5 ingredients or less, because I'm not a chef and I'm busy, but I want to try and make vegetables and these plant-based foods easy to use and tasty. Another very compelling reason why we should be eating more of these plant-based foods is their impact on our gut. So our gut, or to be more precise, your large intestine or colon, has a whole universe of bacteria that live in there. And we're not going to now discuss the microbiome. I'm just going to highlight that what we know today is fascinating around how important the microbiome are to stabilize brain chemistry and our overall well-being. So over 80% of your serotonin and dopamine, which are one of the chemicals in your brain that make you feel motivated and content and happy, are made in your gut. So if your gut is not happy, healthy, and producing the chemicals, it's really difficult for your brain chemistry to follow suit. So wonderful research now showing how when we manipulate the gut, we can manipulate the brain and the body. A personal story for me is my mother, who has a genetic condition called Darris disease. It's a skin form of cirrhosis or very severe eczema. And all her life she suffered with it. And she's gone to various dermatologists, and they give her a medication generally when it flares up called neostigazine, which is banned in the UK and Europe. But my parents live in South Africa still. You can get anything in South Africa, just about. We don't do health and safety well. And the medicine is banned because it's good for your skin, but really bad for your liver. So you kind of, have the one but don't have the other. So she went through a really bad patch about 2 years ago, where her skin flared up really bad, so bad that her eyelids she could hardly open her eyes, and she got a lot of scaling on her neck, and she would lie under a fan with wet towels on her skin to cool it down. And she just reached threshold. And she went to a doctor who is an integrative practitioner. So integrative medicine is now becoming a global movement. And these are doctors, dietitians, nutritionists, physiotherapists that look at you as an integrative person. And they will ask you questions beyond just the symptom that you come to them with. So for the first time in a consultation about her skin, my mother was asked about eating habits and sleeping habits and toilet habits. And my mom has had chronic constipation from the age of 15, goes to the bathroom once a week. We generally don't talk about these things, but they're really important. So this doctor was, that's really important. I would like us to focus on your gut and try and see if we can fix that. And so for the next 3 months, my mom took a probiotic, ate much more plant-based foods, and tried to restrict wheat and refined flour. And in those 3 months, it is incredible what happened. I mean, it's been 2 years now. She has not taken neostigazine again. Some of the permanent scarring on her skin, which we thought was permanent, has started to heal. And she goes to the bathroom every 2 days as opposed to once a week now. So remarkable. There was a direct link between her gut and her skin. So a massive organ. So here's a picture of my mom, and then 3 months later. So I don't know if you can see here that clearly, but there's a lot of scaling, and her eyes were, that's why she looked down at me when I took the photo. And there she is 3.5 months later at the age of 69. So it doesn't matter what age you are. When you start looking at small dietary habits, she didn't go on a major program or go off to an ashram for 3 weeks. She just added more vegetables, took a good probiotic, started reading labels for wheat and flour, and remarkable, absolutely remarkable. I mean, now she's going to save her kidneys, her liver, and her skin. So how do you get inspired? I think these are 2 great books. There's lots of recipe books out there. I'm also happy if you choose to engage with me after you get the thank you note. These are some of the examples of the recipes that I do. 5 ingredients or less, plant-based, and they're meant to help very busy people actually make these kind of shifts in place. So how do you start your day? Are you having breakfast within 2 hours of waking? The idea of within 2 hours is because many of us, the lizard hijack wizard moment starts to happen if we don't eat within 2 hours, unless you are doing intermittent fasting. Anybody try the 5-2 diet by Michael Mosley? Okay, because we can talk about that in the question, because that's something else I'm experimenting with, and it seems contradictory to eating quite often, but it's fascinating in terms of what's happening around the world with people who are doing that approach. Ideally, a breakfast is balanced, not when it's 2 cups of coffee, but when it provides protein and fiber. And if you would like recipe ideas that are quick and easy, just send me a note. And in my book, Fast Food for Sustained Energy, which I'm not going to plug because it's not printed in the UK, but I can send you that chapter in a PDF file out of the book if you'd like some ideas around that. Then even if you're eating the most healthiest kale avocado smoothie in the morning with your NutriBullet, if you put in a whole avocado, and you're a lady like me, that's too many calories. So portion sizes matter. You can be healthy, but you can still perhaps not lose weight. And so many of us are eating portions that are much too big for us. And even though there's lots of color here, I think a lot of us would know what would happen half an hour after you ate this sandwich. You'd have what I call the wildebeest nod. The wildebeest is a big buck in Africa that nods forward like this. So you would just want to perhaps have a siesta. However, we live in a society that encourages us to eat a lot. And so this question is perhaps something worth thinking about. Who makes money when you choose not to eat? Who makes money when you're not eating? You do. Yeah, because you save money, but there's a whole many industries. And I think there's a lot of conspiracy going on anyway around how we are sold to and marketed around what is good and healthy for us. And I think that's why it's just not always that easy to make the right choices. However, no matter where we are, so you could be eating at Itsu, you could be having your sushi, you could be having a hamburger and fries. You could be eating at home, you could be eating right here, grabbing a few sandwiches, no matter where you are. If we want to manage how much we eat and listen to our bodies and eat the right portions, we need to eat more mindfully. So when we eat, eat. And I know that when we live a fast-paced life, it's really difficult to do this. Most of us will probably eat lunch at our computers or on the go. And then what happens is we might reach for the rest of the vegetable wrap and it's finished. And then you kind of look around the office as if a colleague came past and took your lunch. But no, that's snack or eating amnesia. And this is something for perhaps that the French do right. I mean, I just spent the month of August in Paris, so I had a few meetings with clients. And what they do in France is they interestingly don't have breakfast, and the French don't snack. The word for snack is actually, it's grignote. And grignote means that you're eating chocolates or crisps. So it's not a healthy connotation. However, what the French do is they always stop for lunch. Like the whole of MAC, the whole of Estee Lauder and PayPal, where I went for meetings, between 12 and 2 o'clock, everybody empties out and they go out to the bistros and they sit for 90 minutes and they have a 3-course meal, sometimes with a bit of wine. So for me, however, being South African, working a lot in the UK, I'm moving to London next month, can't wait. That doesn't happen here. So the concept of snacking and strategically snacking is key. But even when you're snacking, is to eat more mindfully. So Thich Nhat Hanh, you may have come across him, he's a Vietnamese monk. He has a retreat center in France, which I happened to go and see. And he has this beautiful expression that every single spoonful or forkful that we eat actually contains the universe. Because the sun has shone somewhere to grow something that has fed something that has provided the food for you. And when you eat with a sense of awareness and you just slow down and eat, sit and do that as opposed to eat, talk, answer an email, respond to something else, it makes it easier to listen to when your body tells you that you've had enough. And that usually takes 15 to 20 minutes for your stomach to stretch after a meal, to send the signals up to your appetite center in your brain to say, thank you, I've had enough. Most of us can wipe down a lunch on the go in less than 8 minutes. So we override those signals, and by slowing down, savoring, and eating more mindfully, it can help us to do that. We've spoken a lot about food. This is incredibly important. Are you adequately hydrated? What happens when you're dehydrated? Your energy goes, and for me, headache right here in the front of my temples. And sometimes when our mouth is dry, for some of us, that could be a trigger to look for something to eat when we're not actually hungry. So when you're feeling tired, headachy, and hungry in the afternoon, it would be a good point to reflect on how much water have I had. So how much is enough? Because I think we should measure as much as we can to see if we're doing the right thing. Anybody have an idea of how much water we need? Because we've all heard about 2 liters. Or 8, yeah. It's actually dependent on your body weight, because the more body you have to hydrate, the more you would need. So 1 glass of water for every 10 kilos that you weigh. It works easier in kilograms. Think of your body weight in kilograms, and it's about a glass of water for every 10 kilos. And a glass being 250 mils. So for somebody who's petite and small-framed, you might only need 6 glasses of water a day, which is under 2 liters. Somebody who's heavier might need 10 or 12. And that's baseline. And especially when you're on the go or working in air-conditioned environments, if you're not having this water, then you may be getting thirsty or hungry or hangry, as I call it, when you're skipping meals. And lizard, hijack, wizard, that just makes you hungry and angry and moody and grumpy. And then you will try and shift your brain chemistry using food, refined sugars, salty things. What gets me to drink water, because I don't think water's that appealing, is to have it in sight so that it's in mind. And I've got triggers to help me do that. I've got a lot of these glass bottles with different colored grips, and they serve as a reminder, because I keep them in my home office, my travel office. Sometimes when I go into meetings, I'll have it. And I've got another guideline, is I always have water with my coffee, because I enjoy coffee. And I try and never have 2 consecutive cups of coffee without having some kind of water in between, which is a good strategy because coffee is dehydrating because it's a diuretic. So if this is something you're not doing, it's one of the quickest wins that you can do, is just make an effort to drink consistently more water, and it could help to shift your energy. What it also does is when you drink a lot of water, is it helps you make the right choices and rethink other drinks. And other drinks besides water, the issue with them is if they contain sugar, stimulants, extra calories or kilojoules, and then we'll chat maybe about alcohol. Should we or not? I never know. I get lots of yes, and then we just don't want to know. So all these other drinks, I'm hoping that nobody here drinks sugared beverages on a daily basis. There's just so much science to show how wrong and how bad that is, because when sugar is diluted, we consume huge amounts of it. I mean, in one average energy drink, this includes iced teas and even flavored waters or vitamin type drinks or these new longevity drinks like aloe juice and coconut waters. When they contain sugar, they can contain 6 teaspoons, but sometimes up to 15 teaspoons in an average serving, which is crazy. The World Health Organization says that we need 6 teaspoons of sugar a day. That could even be too much, because it used to be 9 and now it's 6, and who knows, it might be 3. We know that there is a direct link between sugar and aging and many inflammatory processes. And it's all over in our diet. I mean, there's sugar in cold meats. There's sugar in salad dressings. When you start reading labels, it's really enlightening. So to try and not add extra sugar, especially in a beverage, is a really good idea.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Does that include Diet Cokes?
Good quick question. So it is my opinion that the aspartame and artificial sweeteners in diet cold drinks will kill you slower than the 8 or 12 teaspoons of sugar. So go for, I will have a diet drink if it's in a scenario where it's just inconvenient to have something else, knowing that it's not the best choice. So I wouldn't have it every afternoon. I wouldn't even have it more than once a week. Yeah. But if you're trying to manage your energy and your weight, it is better to choose an artificially sweetened drink than sugar, because the sugar is just so high. Yeah. Coffee is okay, but I think we could actually use coffee to be a CEO, a chief energy officer. So if you are sensitive to caffeine, it can work amazingly. One of my colleagues, Dr. Graham Codrington, who works in London, who's a futurist, he specifically takes himself off caffeine several times in the year so that when he does travel a lot and has to deal with jet lag, caffeine works, which I think is quite a clever strategy. So choose decaf, good quality coffee if you're like me and you enjoy the taste of coffee, and try not to, if you're drinking caffeinated coffee, to have more than 300 milligrams of caffeine a day, which is about 3 strong coffees. So if you're edging towards 6 or more, then that could be impacting your sleep, and we're going to chat about sleep, and potentially overworking your adrenal glands, which is not a good thing. And that can just make it easier for us to get to burnout. What about this beverage? These. So the good news, or the bad news, depends on if you drink or not, is that if you never have another glass of wine or another pint of beer again, nothing will happen to you in terms of your health and well-being. You won't miss out on a nutrient or a vitamin. So we don't need alcohol. We need alcohol for other reasons, because it just de-stresses and makes us feel good. And so I've got 2 guidelines around alcohol, understanding that I'm from Champagne, so I'm quite passionate about good wine and good quality bubbly. If you're trying to manage your energy, it's a very good strategy to never drink to forget, only drink to celebrate. So I try and do that. It's not easy. Drink to celebrate, not to forget, because if you use alcohol to manage stress, because you've had a rough day or you're going through a difficult time, that's when it's not serving you well. And we think alcohol helps us to wind down, but actually it does the opposite. So it can help you fall asleep. It does not help you it doesn't help to keep you asleep. In fact, it stops you from dropping into deep delta wave brain activity. And for many of us, when we have a little too much, we don't have to have a lot for this to happen. You can wake up in the middle of the night and feel as if your heart's pounding, and you have a dry mouth because you're dehydrated, because alcohol does that, and then you can't get back to sleep again. So drink to celebrate, not to forget. And then another principle that I recommend is half the quantity, double the quality. So drink like really whatever your alcohol beverage is of choice, really go for quality, but then half the quantity. And try and always have 4 days in the week that are alcohol-free. Even if you don't drink a lot, you might just have 1 glass of wine, but every single night that can easily become a ritual or a crux or a way to change your state when there's so many other natural ways to try and do that. I had a colleague in London recently who was traveling between London and Nottingham on the train, and because he traveled first class, he would always get a drink, a complimentary drink, and he found it difficult to say no to the drink. And after we had a chat, he said, you know what, this is the one thing I'm going to do. I'm going to say no to the Smirnoff, because that was his drink of choice on the train, because when I have that drink, I get home and then I feel like a glass of wine. So my wife and I will open a bottle, and often we finish the bottle. So that one drink is triggering many more glasses of wine. And I'm not sleeping that well, and I'm not losing the few pounds that I want to. So what he did was Monday to Friday, Monday to Thursday. Let me not exaggerate. It was Monday to Thursday. He said no to the drink. And so he didn't go home and drink wine. And he lost weight, slept better, and apparently his wife's now also not drinking the wine and sleeping better too. They actually shared something quite confidential. She had started sleeping in a separate room because he would snore, as we often do when we drink alcohol, and now they're sleeping in the same bed again. So I don't know, they might just have a baby. But yeah, small changes. One drink that he took out had another ripple effect, which was pretty cool. So some of us have got these devices in our bathrooms, right? And we know exactly what they say. It's not important what they say. What is important, there are other numbers that are important, is where your weight sits on your body. So if it's sitting around your waist, we know that that puts you at a higher risk of disease. So you want to try and manage your waist circumference. Knowing your cholesterol levels is really important, your glucose and your blood pressure, because those are an indication of your risk of heart disease, hypertension, and diabetes. And what we know is that they can shift really quickly when we are stressed. So 6 to 8 months of high stress levels and high cortisol, and your blood pressure can skyrocket. And I know so many 30-something-year-olds that are having mild strokes and having significant issues with their metabolism and their state. So it's not happening to older folk. It's happening to younger and younger because of the pace of our life. So I think you work for a wonderful organization that has wellness days and the ability to be able to find out these things. And we should be checking this at least once a year. So every 12 months, you need to be aware of your cholesterol, your blood sugar, and your blood pressure. And if it's out of sync, before just taking a tablet, is to look at what kind of lifestyle changes you could put into place that could help you with that. There's another number that's very important, and that is the number of hours of sleep that you get. So can I ask by show of hands, did anybody have 7 or more hours of sleep last night? About half. 7 or more. 7 or more hours of sleep. Okay? And is that a normal night? Okay? Because what the research is showing is that because we are so tuned in and always on, that when we want to sustain high performance, it's really important to disconnect. And the time that we disconnect and when the brain assimilates memories and learning is when we sleep. So they are, in fact, I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to let Tara Swartz tell you. I said that I'd introduce you to her. Tara Swartz is based in the UK. She's married to a South African doctor. So we do a lot of work with her at the business school that we work with in Johannesburg. She's a psychiatrist and a neuroscientist. So she operates on brains and she understands the anatomy and the psychology around it. And this is her take on why sleep is so important.
So what I call basic hygiene factors like sleep, nutrition, hydration and exercise, everybody knows that we should be doing these things, and it can be a bit like, yeah, of course I know I should sleep, but what we know now from the neuroscience research is so compelling that it really makes it more frightening to think about not doing those things properly. So let's start with sleep. If you have disturbed sleep overnight, so we're meant to have 6 to 8 hours of good quality sleep. There are some CEOs that say they only need 4 or 5 hours and they're sending emails at 5 in the morning and they've already been to the gym. But that's not okay for most people, so that's not something to be admired and followed. Most people need 6 to 8 hours of solid, good quality sleep where they go through the various sleep cycles. If that gets disturbed at all, then you're effectively working with an apparent IQ loss of 5 to 8 points the next day. Now, most people watching this video can probably still do a really good job with 5 to 8 less, IQ points the next day. But an entire night's disturbed sleep, and that could just be a red-eye flight, equates to 1 standard deviation loss of your IQ the next day. Most people couldn't operate on that, whether you're a lawyer, a sportsman, a coach, giving service to other people, you're really putting that at risk. What we know that happens overnight is that there's a system called the glymphatic system. So not the lymphatic system in the body that cleans out our blood cells, but a system that cleans the cerebrospinal fluid that goes around our brain and spinal cord. And that washing process actually clears out protein plaques and tangles that, if allowed to accumulate, lead to dementing illnesses like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So, I've done shift work as a doctor. I travel a lot, jet lag, sleeping on planes. So I really try to ensure good quality sleep every night that I can, and the use of napping is also quite helpful. So A 20-minute nap is like literally plugging in your phone battery. It will just give you a power boost. A 30-minute nap improves learning and memory in the brain. And a 60 to 90-minute nap improves learning, memory, and actually encourages new connections to form, which can unleash creativity in the brain. So that's why Google have nap pods, I think, in their business. It's not because they're asking people to work all hours, it's because they would like to think that people are sleeping enough and improving their creativity if they need to.
Anybody want to have a nap quickly? So how do we get enough sleep? There's a lot around what we call sleep hygiene. It's got to be really dark, really quiet, cool air as opposed to too warm and stuffy. But the one thing we need to avoid, and Ariana Huffington speaks about this in her book, The Sleep Revolution. If you struggle with sleep, this is a must read. Really based on a lot of science and very practical ideas. In fact, she helped me a lot because I went through a period of time where I really struggled with sleep. We have to have a digital detox before we go to bed. Apparently, according to Tara Swartz and other experts, we need about 60 minutes, 1 hour of downtime before our melatonin levels in our brain are high enough to make us feel drowsy and have the ability to then fall asleep. So melatonin makes us feel sleepy. What impacts this is any form of LED light off iPad, Kindle, TVs, laptop devices. So if you can minimize light, not use digital devices, so ideally not be in bed going through Instagram and Facebook. And I know many of us do. It's the last thing that we say goodnight to. It's the first thing that we say hello to, despite having another human being perhaps in the bed with us. But this is something that I put into practice. So about 40 minutes, I can't do an hour, but I can do about 40 minutes. My phone goes onto flight mode. My two phones go into flight mode. And I try not to go straight from laptop to bed, because then I'm wired. Tired, but wired. And then it's just so frustrating to lie there. Another technique is to bring in some mindfulness and meditation to help you fall asleep if you struggle with that. And certainly during the day. So I've read a lot of books around flow and the concept of being able to manage this chimp and the monkey mind and being able to focus in a very distracted world. And this is possibly the best book that I've read in a long time, Stealing Fire by Stephen Kotler. And he looks at how to sustain high performance, especially when we look at the future and artificial intelligence and all the kind of challenges that are coming our way. And what they generally say is that meditation and being able to be mindful is a very good technique for us to sustain high performance. So what does that mean? It means doing this.
We can meditate everywhere, anytime, even 3 seconds, 2 seconds, while you're walking, while you're having coffee and tea, while you're having meeting, so you can meditate. Many people has a little bit misunderstanding about meditation. They think meditation meaning think of nothing, concentrate. So push too much. So we cannot block thought and emotion. In fact, we need thought and emotion. So whether you listen to your monkey mind or not, that's the issue. What I call monkey mind, mine is chatting, pala 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 yada yada. So monkey mind is giving you opinion. So whether you listen to opinion or not, it's up to you, right? So through meditation, what we do is we have to make friends with the monkey mind. But how to make friends? Just giving banana doesn't work, So right method is you need to give job to monkey mind. How to give job monkey mind? So the simple meditation technique is be aware of the breath. So you ask monkey mind, hello, what's breath? So monkey mind says, yeah, good idea. And be aware of breath. Breathing in, breathing out, breathing in. There's a lot of thought comes at the background. Don't care, no problem. So as long as if you're not forget your breath, anything is okay. No need too much concentration. Just simply be aware of your breath. Breathe in, out, in. Even 2 breaths, 1 breath. So therefore, we can meditate everywhere, anytime.
So just being more present and calm can also help if you're not getting enough sleep. That's a step towards helping your body to recover. So are you getting enough nutrients is an important question to ask ourselves. One way to do that is to do the right kind of tests to see whether you can adjust your diet, and if not, whether you can take the right vitamins and minerals and supplements. I think we should always try and get what we need from food, but what I also know as a realist is that a lot of the food that we eat hasn't got all the kind of nutrition that we need, and because of our increased stress levels and pace of life, we often need more. So what kind of tests am I recommending? I think we should be doing nutrigenomic testing along with maybe basic blood tests like measuring your iron levels and vitamin D. So nutrigenomic testing, I've done both of these, DNA Life and 23andMe. And what they do is they give you insight into your body and your DNA. So I know that I should be eating a low-fat Mediterranean-based diet. I know that I need a very particular type of vitamin B and that my body does not detoxify alcohol well, and there are certain vegetables that can help me to do that. So there's a salad that I make once a week that includes 6 of those vegetables, and so it becomes practical, and I eat that on most days of the week. So this is really the next level that you should consider if you haven't already in terms of adjusting your diet to match your blueprint. The last destination we've touched on already, it's the concept of activating your body. So do you activate your body? That means you never sit for longer than an hour. Ideally every half an hour, even if it just means getting up and then standing and working for a bit before you sit down again. Make sure that you stretch, maintain the right posture, proper deep breathing, and then exercise is important. But according to Katrina, I think everybody here is doing some kind of exercise. She's like, they are so fit, and there's like lots of teams. And so we should be doing half an hour to an hour of exercise every day. The World Health Organization is saying the more we sit, the more sedentary and stressed we are, the more we need to release cortisol, and the older we get, the more we need exercise to maintain our lean muscle mass. So we've been to 10 destinations. You are now going to score yourself as I remind you where we've been. And the way you're going to do that is answer yes or no. If you answer yes to the question, give yourself 1 point. And if you answer no, no point. And negotiate half points with me. So the first question was, do you have a strategy around the way that you refuel? So do you have a plan that you stick to 80% of the time that helps you manage your energy levels? Physically, mentally, and emotionally. For me, that is the strategic snacking, and then on occasion, I do the intermittent fasting. So have you got a strategy that works for you to manage your energy, yes or no? And if it's no, no point. If it's yes, 1 point. Do you have a balanced breakfast on most days? So balanced implied some protein and some fiber. Do you eat enough color? So are you eating like an artist? Are you having at least 8 to 10 servings of vegetables, salads, or fruit on most days of the week? Are you balancing your portion sizes? So are you consuming the right number of calories or kilojoules for you? If you're struggling to lose a bit of weight, then you could be getting that wrong. Are you adequately hydrated? So are you drinking at least 1 glass of water for every 10 kilograms that you weigh? Are you rethinking your other drinks? So not too much caffeine, not too much artificial sweeteners. We touched on the alcohol. Do you follow the principles that I shared? Do you know your health numbers? So do you know, are you aware of your cholesterol, your blood pressure, your blood sugar, your waist circumference? Are you taking any supplements to bridge the gaps that could be happening in your nutrition? And to help you do that is to get personalized data back about your body and what you need. Do you get enough sleep? So enough sleep is, some of the experts are saying 6 hours is too little. I know Tara Swart says that, but 7 to 9 hours seems to be the sweet spot. And if not, do you have relaxation moments in the day like mindfulness? And then do you activate your body? So are you stretching and moving regularly? Do you avoid sitting for too long? And are you exercising for half an hour or so most days of the week? So releasing cortisol in that way. What is your score? Anybody with a score of 8 or more yeses, not nos? Yeah? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay. I thought there would be more, but I'm delighted that there's some. Okay, so 8 out of 10 to me fits well in terms of the 80-20 approach. The average score generally is about 4. So who's sitting at 4? Anybody less than 4? Okay, and then if your hand didn't go up, I'm assuming it's between 5 and 7. Okay, so we all have something on the calculator that potentially we could shift. A lot of this is not rocket science. You may not know all the details like nutrigenomic testing or the exact antioxidants for inflammatory processes, but we know the stuff. It doesn't mean that knowledge becomes action. So what do we know about creating new behaviors? Doctor says the best thing you can do is give up smoking, drinking, and fried food. What's the second best? The way we change behavior is to make it easy and simple. And we need to be motivated to make that change. So this chap is an interesting guy, a professor, BJ Fogg, who I follow, and I've done some of his courses. And he seems to have cracked the code for changing behavior. And you need 3 things in place to change behavior. You need the motivation, the ability, and you need a trigger. So I'm going to ask you to choose to think about one thing on the Wellculator that you are motivated to change, that you are able to act on ideally today or tomorrow. So don't say I'm going to go have an MOT and then you can only do that next month. It's got to be something that you can act on immediately, and try and consider what is going to trigger you, because as you leave here in the next few minutes, life's going to carry on and happen. Is there a way, could you set a reminder in your phone, tell the person next to you, what can trigger you? Like for me, my trigger for drinking water is whenever I have coffee. So that's a trigger, and it's easy, and I'm committed to doing that. So what of the Wellculator, and we discussed various points under each, do you feel you can connect to? I see some very passionate commitments. I hope that you'll hold the person accountable. And you have such a great resource here. You will get a follow-up note from me, and I am really just an email away. I'll share my contact details with you, but you've got great support here at CBRE. I mean, there's the Employee Assistance Program, there's the Stronger Minds where you can actually go and address any kind of mental issue without having to get a referral through a GP. They're Wellbeing Champions. These are all the things when we look at leading organizations and what they're doing and getting it right around well-being, these are the kind of things that we see are in place. So the intranet is a wonderful resource. That's where you will get the follow-up from today. And I will leave my contact details up, and I'm going to be around if some of you have the time to stay and we can answer a few questions. And on that note, if I bump into you in the streets of London when I'm here next month, I'm going to ask you how your Wellculator pledge is going. Thank you. Thank you.